Hello and welcome to the Voice of the People. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. It is my pleasure, it is my honor, and I believe it's my duty to bring you information that will inspire you, motivate you, and free you from a yoke of an orientation that's not to your advantage. And hope and pray that you not pass this American curriculum on to your children. We must stop the madness. We must break the cycle of inferiority indoctrination towards our own selves. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. This show is sponsored by Myers Law. Attorney Catherine Myers. You can contact her at 803-250-1176. So if you need a lawyer to fight for you, to get your justice, you call the legal eagle. You call the attorney that other attorneys call when they have problems with the law. You call Attorney Catherine Myers at 803-250-1176. It's just a blessing to be here on this Monday night to share with you and to celebrate with you what some of you have been doing all day long, and some of you have had cookouts today, and you've had hot dogs and hamburgers, and you gathered together and you participated in a celebration of spirit, something that you were told was called Labor Day. I would like to engage upon you and impress upon you that the history of Labor Day is quite painful. And when we look back in the state of South Carolina and over this country, as we look at the issues that we have with child labor, with black laborers, and so the history of that is quite sobering. So I don't want to mess up your holiday, but I want you to take the time in the near future to understand the history of the African American workers and how we built this country. It's important that we take a moment to talk about the Delta variant, and we talk about what's going on in the state of South Carolina. We are number one into Delta variant and infections, and we're number one in not being vaccinated. And so we're in crisis. We have a public health crisis in the state of South Carolina. And like most states, if we have a crisis in the entire state, most of the urban areas where all the healthcare facilities are and the institutions of higher learning and a higher level of cultural activities and exposure. And then we have a majority of the state, which is a rural area, and history and the data prove that we are a poor state. We must be concerned about access to health care. Folks living in a rural area do not have access to health care. We must also be concerned about, in the urban areas, there's a high concentration of folks that are without insurance and they're not employed, and our healthcare system has been burdened with this increase in numbers of affected persons that are unvaccinated, and they're taking up all the hospital beds, and our healthcare facilities cannot keep up with the basic health needs of all of our citizens because we are refusing, intentionally and unintentionally, and with political ideology and religious ideology and this mad misinformation propaganda is going around on social media. And we're in a position of suffering. We're in a position that we're going to die. And I want to give a shout out to all the folks who have done, what they could. We've said what we could say. We've been motivating and giving out information, trying to get our people vaccinated because we are trying to achieve, listen closely, we're trying to achieve community immunity within the black communities. Now, we know we live in a segregated state, and so we have a lot of black communities where this bunch of black folks are not vaccinated, and then we're in a position to spread that virus and to kill one another. It is sad because death from the Delta variant is avoidable. We don't have to die from this Delta variant. And so for folks in the black community, some folks they're peddling and they're advocating this degree of mistrust, and they're encouraging people who are hesitant. We should try to find ways to help them understand the science, help them process the information from the World Health Organization, from the Center for Disease and Control and for South Carolina DHEC, and all the public health researchers and practitioners, and so it's important that we do something to save our communities. Now I want to say something here that it's not complicated, but I just want us to consider this. Let's consider saving our families. Let's consider, and how we do that is if you have a household with 2 adults, 1 adult, and several children, everybody over the age of 12 should be vaccinated. We should wear the mask. We should teach one another and educate one another as that we leave the household, when we go to shop, when we go to work, when we go to school, that we will wear the mask to protect ourselves and protect our family, because we don't want to be without the mask and go someplace and bring that virus back to the household and cause our family members to be recipients of this Delta variant. So I plead with you, I'm begging you, let's save one another, let's love one another. And for you Christian folks, don't get discouraged. We're going to do a new type of evangelism. We're going to be evangelizing in our community, telling people to accept the blessing that God has made available, and that's the vaccine. And it's been proven that the mask save lives. And for folks who got these theories out here about the vaccine, I can tell you this. We know that thousands and thousands and thousands of people have died from the COVID virus. We also know that nobody has died from taking the vaccine. So by simple deductive reasoning, it is safe to assume that you're safe for taking the vaccine. And some folks are out here saying that you can take the vaccine and you can still be infected. That is exactly true. You can take the flu vaccine and still catch the flu, but your symptoms will be much milder. If you take the vaccine and you catch the Delta variant, your symptoms will be much milder. You won't experience death and you won't go to ICU. And so taking the vaccine is a proven level of protection for yourself and your family, and particularly your children. And I want to make some brief comments here about children. You know, we have an issue here in the state of South Carolina. We got public schools, and the school districts have not mandated that teachers and support staff and all the adults take the vaccine. We have also not mandated that those employees of the district wear a mask. That's where we're at. And now the governor and they're saying that we can't mandate for the children to wear the mask. So that's where we're at. But I don't want you to be discouraged, because in spite of the situation that we're in, everything that you hear, I want you to listen closely, particularly parents. Parents, you still have a choice, and you can take a chance, and you can make a change. And everything you do during this season, listen closely, has a possible impact that it would be life or death for your child. So don't take this conversation light. Let's take it real serious. I suggest that parents, that we understand that we are responsible for the safety and the well-being of our children. Now here's what you can do, no matter what the law says, no matter what the school district says. If I'm sending my child to school, I'm going to demand that my child, if they're over 12, I'm going to get them the vaccine. I'm going to make them wear the mask, and I'm going to go to the school, and I'm going to see what kind of environment my child is going to be exposed to. I'm going to look in the classroom, and I'm going to tell my child to wear the mask. And if I see other students not wearing the mask, I really don't have the power to tell them what to do. But if I see a teacher not wearing the mask, as a parent, I can demand and request that the teacher that's in that classroom, for protection for the children, you can demand that those staff wear masks. Okay, you have the right to do that. You also have the right to go to the school district office and talk to the board members who are making decisions about the safety of your children, because you're the parent and you're in charge. Listen closely. And after you inspect the classroom, after you inspect the teachers and the staff and the school buses, and you talk to the school board members and the superintendent, if you see a school district that you feel by your standards is not a safe place for your child. You have every right not to expose your child to that risk. In this crisis, a lot of people get real caught up and they get frustrated with the government. But understand something in this country, as individuals, the same way folks have a right not to wear the mask, you have a right to wear the mask. You have a right to make sure that the school environment is safe for your child, and you have the right to make a decision for your child not to go any place that's not safe. You still have the option of homeschooling. You still have the option of virtual school. You have to be very intentional and serious and get all the facts and visualize the environment for yourself, because you are ultimately responsible for the welfare of your child and for their safety. Now, a lot of folks don't like to hear that, but that is the truth. Now, I'm thinking moving forward that things might change a little bit to demanding that folks wear the mask. A lot of jobs now are demanding that you get vaccinated or you subject yourself to extreme testing. Some of the private sector jobs are just telling you can't work if you're not vaccinated. And they're looking at, for the airlines, if you're flying, you have to prove that you've been vaccinated. So things are moving forward. It's political, it's spiritual, it's commercial, all those factors involved. But no matter how the situation seems to you, I myself and you, we have choices and options on how we survive. Nobody can take away our choices. Now, we try to do the best we can. We try to be law-abiding. But, when kids are involved, we have to make some tough choices. I was on a radio show maybe 3 weeks ago when I said, look, your child can always be educated if they are alive, okay? And so we have to be sincere about what we're doing. I've noticed something here lately. A lot of parents who were supporting shutting down the schools about a year ago, those parents, particularly in the working class and the lower classes and the middle class, those parents they want schools to be open at all costs. And I think part of the motivation, is that they can't stay home with the children. They can't afford to stay home and work because during the previous year when they were unemployed and the additional monies that they got to the unemployment check and the stimulus checks and all that kind of stuff, folks were making more money than they ever made. And some folks are saying that destroyed a degree of work ethic out of a lot of individuals because they made so much money not working, and now you're asking them to work for about half of that money. So that's created a barrier to folks going back to work. And so some folks in the back of their mind, for what I hear in the streets, some folks are thinking that if they don't get vaccinated, if they don't wear the mask, and that the infection rates start going up and people start dying, people are thinking that we're going to close the schools and the businesses back down, and they think we're going to be the recipients of those benefits again. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. But we're in a crisis in this country now because you can't find workers, and in some occupations we don't have skilled workers, and then we have some workers, what I've seen out in the community, that don't have the soft skills. So what do I mean by soft skills? When you go in a restaurant, your expectation is that somebody treats you like a customer. They call you sir, call you thank you, try to meet your needs. They do not give you any negativity if you change your order and that type of thing. So it's been my experience in certain parts of town, because of the labor shortage and because employers are so desperate to hire people, that the quality of customer service that you're receiving in some of these businesses is questionable, is to say the least. Also, we have this frustration, this tension. Me personally, I've been vaccinated, I wear the mask. And when I go in a certain business and the employees don't wear the mask, and some of the employees are wearing the mask, and some folks are practicing social distancing, it's frustrating, it's concerning, because it could be life-altering and it could cause you to get infected and die. And so it's just a big, hot mess out here. But I believe that God has given us the power and the knowledge to achieve what we're working for and achieve what we're praying for. It matters not the situation or the opposition. I think we're going to prevail, and I think we're going to experience victory. But it's going to be challenging because we have opposing views. We have some people in the faith community that are in opposition to the vaccine and wearing the mask, and some folks are in support of it. And so we have this political divide. We got this division among churches and religious leaders, and some folks having a theology of respecting the science, and some people having a theology that they do not respect the science. And so one of the questions that I ask folks all the time, even with what we are dealing with as adults, we do what we want to do, how we want to do it, because here in America, we are free to be a burden or to be a public risk to somebody else, which I don't agree to. But when you stop and think, what are we teaching our children during this time? We had a problem about a year ago about the highest office in the country. His personality and his behavior was rude, disrespectful, not respecting women, not respecting people of color, other nationalities. He demonstrated a personality of hatefulness and racism and that type of thing. And here we are in 2021, about halfway through, and we got children being subjected to parents who are not participating in critical thinking and deductive reasoning. We got parents who are saying that science is a lie. And so we got children that are listening to this. We got some children that are conflicted. They believe in the science. They're studying, they're in school, and they love their parents. And so it's confusing for children when they go to school and they talk among each other, and to really to be aware of the attitudes and the hatefulness and the harsh reality of the prejudice of their parents. Children are very impressionable. I'd like to share with you this important fact. Even though this pandemic, the Delta variant, all this stuff is frustrating to us, can you imagine how the minds and the hearts of the children are being impacted by this confusion that we are experiencing? We normally teach our kids to follow the rules, respect the law, respect the science and that type of thing. And here we have a nation and the message that we're sending to our children is that nothing matters, and that we can't work together, and that the public health concerns of this nation, that we cannot come together as a democracy, supposedly, to come up with a plan to save our own lives. Look, listen, we're going to have to come up with a plan to save our own lives. So I just want to share that to you. Children, even though they can't vote, they can think. Their minds and their hearts are experiencing extreme emotional trauma during this time. And so I just want us to be mindful that as we make decisions on how to fight this Delta variant, to get vaccinated. And now, folks are talking about if you've had your vaccination over 8 months, that you're eligible or starting to be eligible for a booster shot. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to think about, and we need to share information among one another. This Delta variant has caused division among a lot of families. I have family members that I love been vaccinated. I have family members that I love that have not been vaccinated. I hope and pray that they will find within their heart, that they would research the information, and that they would come to a conclusion that there's some things that they can do to save their life. None of us want to see our loved ones infected with this Delta virus and die. We do not want that. But we have to be careful how we approach people and how we advocate for what we think is best based on our belief. And so I just hope and pray that we continue to communicate with one another and to speak to one another out of love, and that, we all have our own lived experience and we all think that what we think is right. But, we have to come together on some level to save our lives. And I keep saying that because what we're really doing, we're trying to save our lives. And so I read an article the other day. No matter what happens to us in life, we have a choice. And we must take a chance if we want change. And sometimes we get to the point in life that we're so caught up in the drama and the historical perspective of problem solving that we have convinced ourselves that we're not capable of making smart decisions to save ourselves, and we put our minds and hearts into neutral, and we overwork our faith. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, let's talk straight talk for a minute. No matter what your religion, no matter what your faith, no matter how you worship, that's your right in this country. Also in this country, you have a right not to believe in any deity, any God, or any religion. And so some folks are uncomfortable with that, but that's the reality of the country that we live in, and the rights and privileges that we live by in this country. But I want to share something to you. We cannot confront a public health crisis. We cannot confront this issue with public schools and saving our children, the issue with access to health care, not having insurance, having jobs and not having a livable wage so you can have insurance and that type of thing. We can't confront mass incarceration and our poor communities being over-policed, black men in particular being targeted for minor non-violent crimes and being given charges and not given bail, and being forced to make confessions to get out of barbaric, violent type detention centers. So all those things that we're experiencing, and listen close to what I'm saying. I'm going to say something to make some people uncomfortable, but somebody has to speak the truth, and I'm going to explain something to you. God is in the healing business. He's always been in the healing business. But God has given us the power, and God has given us the knowledge. You can just take a look at Labor Day. You know, if you study history, you remember when all of our labor was free and we were slaves. And you remember how we worshiped and we prayed and we moaned. And while we were doing that, there were some believers, there were some Christians that were not only moaning and praying and waiting and hoping, they were also working and having strategies and organizing and challenging the status quo, and going through the legal means of getting justice and getting rights and changing the laws in spite of being lynched, killed, and murdered and discriminated against and all of that. And so in our community, we have to understand that there's always been a history of some of us praying and not doing nothing, and some of us praying and doing something. And I want to submit to you tonight that as we move forward in 2021, particularly our faith leaders and all our officers in the church and all of us who believe, we must be careful that our faith become void because of our fear, because of our lack of knowledge, because of our preparation to do something for ourselves. Understand that when we worship, that our children are watching us to see whether our worship will turn into any strategy and any action. And it's through how we worship and believe in God and practice our faith and put up the fight and organize and get up off of our lazy behinds and talking this rhetoric to our children about hold on and wait for 500 years. And that, understand that ideology and that theology has not been effective in our communities and in our race for 400 years. It was those folks in our community, particularly our faith leaders, who was trained in the gospel of Jesus Christ to understand that God is on our side and understand that we have work to do. You cannot plant a seed in the ground and do not till the soil and do not weed it out, do not water it, do not fertilize it, and think that you're going to get a harvest. Remember, however we worship on Sunday, no matter what kind of message that we hear on Sunday, it has to have some application for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Listen close to what I'm saying. We cannot be pacified with that emotional high and entertainment and rhetoric on a Sunday morning and Sunday evening and have nothing on Monday that's tangible that can motivate us and sustain us and make us love ourselves enough that we would do something to help our brother and our sister. We must move past singing and dancing and worshiping and having prayers without strategies. Listen closely. I know a lot of people are uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. God is on our side. God has always been on our side. And there's always been in our community, just listen closely. I just want to tell it to you like it is. We got some men that's not called. We have some men that are just vocational orators. And the reason why you can identify a vocational orator is most of the time they have a lot of charisma. They're well dressed, men and women, and they're very excitable, and they get you motivated, and they get you excited, but they don't give you a plan. They don't give you a strategy. They don't give you any organizational tools. Here's a perfect example. We cannot go to church on Sunday and not have a meeting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night about voting in our community, about violence in our community, about the vaccine. Listen closely. We have to start evangelizing about faith, about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and also we need to start evangelizing about our duty as Christian men and women, as citizens, and civic engagement. Now, I know a lot of people want to be void of any responsibility. Just because you praise God and you tithe, that doesn't release you of the obligation and the responsibility to use the gifts and talents that God has afforded you to uplift your brothers and sisters, particularly in your community and your family. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I'm respectful enough to give you the facts. There's a lot that we can do that we do not do because somebody has given us a spirit of fear. They've given us a spirit of complacency, and they've told us that we have to follow. Without doing the research, without having the lived experience to understand whether the vision has to be more than fundraising. You cannot practice the faith and raise your family and be motivated to keep on keeping on if you don't have a faith that God has given you the ability, that God has given you the grit to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, and to make a better life for the next generation. If we don't get me confused. Sometimes in some situations we don't have the power. Sometimes in some situations we don't have the majority vote, but we always have the voice. And in our voice we find power. And in our power we must try our best to find unity. Because we don't do nothing else. We must instill the will to fight and to resist injustice and to fight for social justice. And that should be demonstrated in a manner that our children can see us and be proud of us. Listen closely. We do not want to live a life. We do not want to have a theology, politics, religion, whatever, that our children don't respect us as men and women, as fighters for justice, and for us to create barriers to injustice. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. In conclusion, remember what we got going on in our community. We got this issue about voting suppression and voter integrity. My solution to that is, it does not matter what the enemy is doing, it matters what we are doing to help ourselves. So we need to get ready to vote. When we look at violence, violence is a symptom of a broken families, a bad educational systems, and bad theology. And we look at the vaccine, we must remember that God is in the business of saving us and healing us, and He's provided us with the opportunity to save our lives and to save our children and to save our communities. And so I plead with you and I beg you, please consider taking the vaccine. Please consider getting your children over 12 vaccinated. Please wear the mask. Please advocate for your children to the best that you can. And remember, pray for me and I pray for you. And on every Monday night, I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. And I will continue to love you enough to tell you the truth, and I will continue to respect you enough to give you the facts.